Let me know if you get that push notification.
Alright, sent it in the Discord chat. Now I'm gonna post it.
Cool. So we'll just give it a couple minutes. Let some people join. So if you don't already see from the screen, Patrick's in the middle. CEO, Austin's all the way on the left.
Dang, somebody already disliked the video.
That's okay. I posted it everywhere. Lender Craze, what's up? Adam Richmond. Aramis. Can you see the questions?
Somebody already disliked the video? That's kind of hilarious.
It's just because of the stature of the video.
There's nothing to dislike yet, guys.
See? I don't know, dude. It's YouTube. People just dislike when they mean to like. So I just tell them to extra dislike, smash it twice. August, what's up? Louise, Dante. Okay, so if you guys got any questions about Lambda School, now's your time to ask. Patrick, you guys know him. He goes to Lambda School, so this will be good. So feel free to drop questions in the chat. And I have one question. Well, I have a couple questions actually. So one question from YouTube was from Craig Bourne. He says, I'm in the first UK EU cohort starting on the 7th. You were wondering, is there a maximum cohort for the EU UK?
Maximum size?
Yeah.
So the first one, we always start with 20.
For like a different like region. So like the very first Lambda was 20 people.
Yeah, so we kind of start slow and then build it up as really in the UK specifically, where we need to get a lot of hiring partners on board where we have them in the US. So yeah, just, be smart about things, start slow, that kind of thing.
Do you expect the same job prospects for there to match those of the US-based students? I imagine so, right? Because it's the same plan, it's the same kind of guarantee. Yeah,
I think the UK and EU students will actually have a leg up because we'll have, kind of months of, Lambda's just further along now than it was when Lambda US started. So yeah, I think you'll have better prospects, if anything. The UK specifically has pretty comparable job market to the US, but there's less, there are less code schools. There aren't as many out here. There are hundreds of boot camps, and that's not as much of a thing in the UK. So less competition, relatively similar job market. It should net out about the same, I'd imagine.
What about for I guess this is just my question. What about for lower cost of living countries that are still technically in the EU?
Yeah, we'll have to kind of figure out what the right balance is there. If you get a job working in Poland, you're not going to be making a British salary. But we already see some of that in the U.S., right? We have a lot of people hired in rural Ohio. They're not going to make the same as someone hired in San Francisco. So we just try to create a model that's flexible enough to kind of encompass all of those folks.
So would the ISA number increase or decrease based on where they live, or still flat the same?
It'd still be the same. The minimum salary will be lower than it is in the U.S. For that reason. The whole model might change a little bit. We're still figuring out some of the details there, but we're trying to find the right numbers that make sense for everybody in the UK and the EU. Okay. Right now, there's the same thing. We'll see if the UK continues to be a part of the EU in the future.
Right. So what about any plans to expand to Canada? I know you said Canada, when you were typing in the live stream, that the government, whenever the government lets you. What about Asia?
Yeah, really, so there are a few things that have to happen before we roll out an income share agreement in any given country. The first, there has to be kind of regulatory, approval of that. In the US, you can kind of do whatever you want because we regulate things after the fact. In other countries, that's not the case. They regulate first, and then you have to ask permission instead of asking for forgiveness. So there are a few countries in Asia that are likely to kind of pop up in the next 12 to 18 months. But I try to be really careful not to suggest anything that may not be true until it's actually true. Canada is one that we're close with. There's some other countries that are in the hopper.
Okay, so now we have a couple other questions. One person says they did one interview and they got, like, I guess, rejected. Can they do a second interview?
Yep.
So you just reapply?
Yep.
Is there, like, a limit?
Nope. Maybe there will be one day, but...
I think you only have, like, one person working all of that, right? It's like one girl, she calls everyone.
We used to. Now we have 2, and we just brought another 2 on board. So we've got 4 people full-time doing interviews now.
Okay. What about Australia? Have you looked there?
Yeah, that's... so Australia kind of has... Like, the university system kind of operates like an income share agreement in Australia. And that just hasn't... We haven't gotten there yet. If there's a country you want us to go to, we want to go to that country. It's just a matter of getting it on the roadmap and getting everything worked out.
Okay. Dom says, how much...
I really wish we could be everywhere instantly all at once. That would be really great.
Well, there's so much legality behind it. Like, you like, if you just roll that out, like, there's no way you can go after someone to make them pay you back if they're just like, thanks, bye. Like, so that's what people don't get. I have to explain that. A lot of people DM me and I'm explaining, like, they can't just do a guarantee in some random country, because if you just take the education and buy, there's nothing they can do. So it's like...
Yeah, I mean, really the main thing that needs to be in place is kind of credit infrastructure. Like, if you can give loans, then there's some recourse for people that don't pay back their loans. And if there's a recourse for people that don't pay back loans, then we can, kind of piggyback on that. If there's not, like, if there's no credit, no lending, it's a really difficult place to go into and say, yeah, we're going to make an income share agreement work. If people can't, like, take out a mortgage,
Right. Dom wants to know, how much do you pay me every week to create a video about LAMBDA? You don't. I tried to tell them that. Like, you don't. I just do it because I wanted to follow someone at boot camp.
I mean, you told them how you're connected to us, right? How you're connected to Ben?
Yeah, Ben taught me how to code. And then someone in Discord was like, hey, check out LAMBDA School. And I was like, okay. And then they put my name with you. And then you responded back, and I saw Ben was CC'd on it. I was like, wait, I know that name. Is this the same Ben? And that's how it worked out. And so that's how I know them.
Yeah, we're homies.
Pretty much.
I've never met Josh.
We will. I'm going to come out there, and I'm going to take you and Patrick to lunch so that you guys can, like, talk. I think that'd be a cool video. I have to get that scheduled with your assistant. Like, we tried to do that, but...
Patrick, where are you at?
I'm in San Jose, just south of you.
Oh, man, you're not even that far. Yeah.
So you guys don't even need me. You could just go.
Dude, Josh, we have an office with extra beds in San Francisco. We can just fly you out and put you up there.
Let's
There
do
you
that.
go.
That's the plan. We'll make it happen.
Airbnb.
So how's the housing cost of living experiment thing going?
It's going well. I mean, those students haven't graduated yet, so it's, we don't have data around how they're doing in the job market. But I think just having housing taken care of so that you can focus on studying is a pretty serious advantage. I mean, some students have that with family or whatever else, but if you don't have that, it's a little bit stressful, a little bit hard. So we'll have to see how fast we can roll that out, or if it makes sense to just do a living stipend straight up. But and frankly, our margins aren't as good on it as they are without it, because housing is really expensive. But I would love to make that work at a really big scale. So both the housing and the living stipends that we're playing with so far are working really well. So cross your fingers, everyone. Make sure everyone that's in a house gets a job. Then it makes it easier for us to invest more.
Patrick, you have a question.
What's been my favorite part of the program? What part needs the most improvement? I think my favorite part of the program was just the fact that we did React and Redux. I don't know what it was about it. I mean, it was hard, but I feel like I learned so much during those weeks that it seemed like, I don't know, for now I'm in the experimental group with labs, as you probably know, Austin. But because of how I struggled through React and Redux and how they taught it, I don't know, there are just things that, like, we weren't taught, but I can figure out on my own because you guys gave me just enough breadcrumbs that I can just take off running with anything that I need to solve personally. So I
was
feel
gonna say,
that...
wait a minute, didn't isn't that where you almost quit?
That is where I almost quit. And it's good you said that, because that's the interesting part, is that it was so hard, but I'm glad I didn't quit, and I'm glad I kept going. So
yeah, that's good. I think people don't realize how intentional that is. Not, we don't want people to consider quitting, but like our goal is to push you right up to your limit, to the point where you kind of have to learn to figure stuff out on your own. Because like that's what you really have to do as a software engineer, right? Like we're not going to be there when you're, well, I guess we'll be there, but like we're not going to be holding your hand 6 months into your job being like, okay, so here's this new language you've never seen, we're going to teach it to you now. Like you just have to be able to look at the documentation and figure it out. And if we don't get you to that point as a developer, then we can't guarantee that you'll be successful. So that's our goal, is to teach you how to learn. And if you're at the point where you're like, yeah, I don't know what's going on here, but I can look it up and figure it out, that's a win.
So how is Lambda Next going? Like last time we talked, it was just barely going to be a thing, and like the next day you launched it. But like it's 7.5 months already just for the boot camp. Is there like a start and end to Lambda, or is that just until you get a job?
So
the Lambda Next, sorry.
Yeah, so Lambda Next, the point of Lambda Next is to get you a job as quickly as you possibly can, or as quickly as we possibly can, as quickly as everybody possibly can. And it's working really well. So we have, the tricky thing is making sure that you're rewarding people that are working for it, and making sure that, there's something there for people that are putting in the work. So we now have, in addition to Lambda Next, we have a full sales team that is basically contacting and bringing in companies, and they're doing presentations basically every day. And at the end of the company presentation, it's like a call for applications, and we'll work with you to submit your application to that company. So now we're seeing about a third of our students hired through people that Lambda School has brought in, as opposed to like you just going out and pounding the pavement. So that's really exciting. But I mean, Lambda Next works. The tricky thing has been, first of all, people are kind of out of money by the end of Lambda School, and they need something now. Especially folks from lower income backgrounds. If you're out of cash, you can't just like be like, hey, I need a developer job next week. It doesn't ever work like that. So I don't think we've talked about this much yet, but one of the reasons that Patrick is piloting being in labs before the computer science section is because we want to get to the point where students can start applying for jobs basically 20 weeks into the program instead of after graduation. We're not quite there yet, but we want to get to the point where everyone basically is hired by the time they're done, and we're pulling Lambda Next into the rest of Lambda School. So we'll see. We'll still have Lambda Next. We also had to make it much more flexible, so that 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. doesn't continue to work for everybody after graduation. So we've basically made it so there's kind of around-the-clock support, and as long as you're putting in your 8 hours a day, we can make that work. We can make that happen. But it's been, as a program, it's been phenomenally successful. Almost everybody that's ever done it has been hired within like a month. So it definitely works. It's just making sure that everybody who wants to participate can.
Okay. So there's a couple questions that are pretty similar, so I guess I'll ask those. For people that have no experience coding, what should they prepare? Because you guys have the free code bootcamp that you guys have like every week, and it's like 2 weeks long, I think, and that prepares you for what you need to know to get into Lambda School. But what should they study if they don't know anything about code? I usually just say like the fundamentals of JavaScript.
Yeah, I think that's the best response. Every student that you talk to, the number one thing they would say is, man, I wish I knew more JavaScript before. I mean, not knew more, but like had it mastered, right? You have a serious leg up. If not only, do you kind of know JavaScript, but if you know it cold and you're ready to roll, then when you get into React, it's that much easier. So, kind of watch and code eloquent JavaScript, some of the really good like deep dive in JavaScript stuff. We'll get there too, but if you had to pass through that before you start Lambda School, that's a win.
Awesome. So there are people I asked you this in our like recorded video that we did a while back, but how do you think Lambda holds up to a CS degree? I know you guys focus on the CS topics that are used at work, but you kind of just like, why do you need to know how to build a compiler from scratch kind of stuff, and you focus on like the actual like memory management of C, something that you might do at work. So what do you think the difference is, and how does that hold up? How does that compare?
Yeah, so I mean, the programs were just built differently. So a CS degree, the way that happens is you go to an accrediting body, and the accrediting body says, okay, you need X many hours, and they all have to be science-based because it's computer science. So you're basically working backwards from like, okay, what stuff related to computers have something to do with science? And you try to build out a curriculum. So a lot of that is applicable, and it's the closest that we have to kind of a software engineering degree. There's actually a class of degree that a couple schools have piloted called software engineering, like a bachelor's in software engineering, which is that's basically what we teach. So as far as, the computer science portion goes, we write a lot of code in C, we work with memory management, you understand operating systems, you understand scalability, you understand, architecture of computers. And basically, it's the stuff that you need to know if you're going to write really good, scalable code. If there's something that is esoteric that you'd never actually use again, which is a lot of computer science that you'd never think about again, even if it's a really interesting intellectual contortion or thought experiment, we don't spend as much time with that. So it's really just, what do you need to know to write really, really great code? And we focus on that.
Okay. Patrick, I don't know if you have any more questions, but I have some. I'll give you a shot, though.
I have a question for you, Austin. Have you guys Have you guys thought about branching, maybe the possibility of looking into bringing Lambda to juveniles and non-juvenile prisons, maybe to help further education for inmates when they get out?
I would love to do that. We've talked with a couple organizations that were interested in that. They had some concerns around how that would work internally with them. But I have no qualms. There are felons in Lambda School today. That's not something we, shout or broadcast all the time, but, we're not, you can still get a job as a software engineer being a felon. It's not, your life shouldn't be over, in my opinion, if you've committed a felony. So yeah, when we say that we want Lambda School to be accessible, I think that's something that we're pretty serious about. If you have a connection, obviously we can't just push it into, juvenile detention centers on our own. There has to be someone working with us on the other side, but happy to work with anyone that may be interested.
Cool.
And then I had one more question before I have to get going, actually. So have you guys thought about maybe extending the 7.5 months, which was extended even more because of, I guess originally it was 6 months. But have you guys thought of maybe extending the curriculum to allow for internships for people so that they can maybe go to an internship with a hiring partner before they graduate?
So yeah, we've talked about that. In my mind, whether you do that before or after graduation, like graduation is this kind of esoteric moment when you say somebody's done. And I don't really care when that graduation moment is. It can be, you can graduate after day one if I know you'll have a job, So we're most focused on making sure students are successful, and wherever graduation needs to be to make students successful, we can call that graduation. So we've built it in such a way that, we also don't want you to be required to be in school for longer than you need to be. Mostly for financial reasons and for opportunity cost reasons. Like if you can get a job and study computer science on the side, that's great. In fact, we've had some students, get a job full time and switch to the part-time computer science section, because we don't want them to miss out on that really, really important stuff. But we also don't want to say no, you should turn down that job and then hope it works out later. So yeah, we're pretty flexible as far as that goes. Whether it's before or after graduation, we can make it work.
Awesome. All right, I have to head out and do some adult things. It was great talking to you, Austin, and I'll see everybody later.
Good seeing you.
Bye, guys.
Grab lunch.
See you, Patrick. All right, so 1 second. All right, so I have a couple questions. So this is for web devs specifically, but you guys have like machine learning. I think you renamed it to data science, and then you also have a UI UX. How are those going? Because I know the full-time UI UX one is relatively new, and I think you even have an Android one coming out.
Yep, we have iOS, Android, data science, and UI UX. So we actually retooled data science, so it's not just a renaming. We rebuilt the curriculum so that it will, like, machine learning jobs pay really well, but they're more difficult to get to. And data science is usually kind of lower on the totem pole than, it's easier to get an entry-level data science or data analyst job than it is an entry-level machine learning job. So we kind of focused all of our effort on and ammunition on that as opposed to, just machine learning. You still learn machine learning, it's just not, 6 months of machine learning. Android is going well, UX is going well. I mean, none of those classes have graduated yet, but the quality of work that they can put out being a couple months in. When you think about the people that, can't code and then a couple months later they're writing full React apps, it feels like that, but design. It's pretty cool.
So are you guys, I know recently you guys got some like larger investments from bigger players. Are you guys still in expansion mode, or are you just like, let's do this thing really, really good, or both? You know what I mean?
I don't think those are mutually exclusive. In fact, I think the more we expand, the better the school gets. Because as you have more students, you can have better instructors, you can spend more money on making sure they're hiring connections, and you're building out that network. So a lot of students now are getting hired because they can work with graduates and alumni. And we want that alumni network to get as big as it can, as fast as we can, while maintaining quality. So it's a balance, but we pretty rigorously track both the skill level and the net promoter score of students. And it is going up fast, both in skill level and net promoter score. And one thing that may not be intuitive to a lot of people, but the bigger Lambda School gets, the higher the net promoter score gets. So it's actually better for students if there are more students than if there are less. That's not the same as a traditional, Harvard or Stanford or whatever. They're trying to say, we only accept 0.001% of the population. We're still pretty selective on the admission side, but our goal isn't to find the 0.01% and exclude everybody else. It's to help everybody get to where they can or should be at.
So talking about I guess acceptance, I've had a couple people ask, and I'm not even sure how it goes, but so you have to take the Lambda test to get in, which tests your knowledge, and then after that you also have to do a phone call. Well, what does that phone call consist of besides how are you going to support yourself while you do Lambda School?
So the phone call is mostly to weed folks out that aren't dedicated, that don't understand what Lambda is actually about, that aren't able to work with people, or so that is more of a screening than anything, and most of the selection is based on how well you do in the work aspect of it. We're moving, I don't know if it's live yet, but we're moving to a place where instead of just the tests, we're going to have what we call tryouts, which is basically you're going to get in a group and you're going to work on group code projects. That way we'll be able to see not only can you write code, but how do you work with other people? How do you work when you're frustrated? What is the thing that makes up you, and what will you do when confronted with trials and adversity? We saw that with Patrick, right? Definitely capable technically, but if he would have just quit when it got tough, then he wouldn't have made it. So we have to find folks that are tough and resilient and will work well with other folks. And it's a community at the end of the day, right? So we have to find the right people for that community.
I just have a question then. How big is Lambda School right now, if you happen to have the number?
So we have 700 students concurrently enrolled, and about 200 graduates.
And then on the staffing side, I know you guys are rapidly expanding.
We have 40 people full-time and 80 people part-time, so 120 total.
Awesome. One person asked, cracking the coding interview and leap code. Do you guys recommend those resources for people leaving the code bootcamp?
Yeah, they're pretty solid. We try it, so part of Lambda Next has that kind of code practice built into it. So we try to do it, instead of you reading a book, everybody with, you there as an instructor. But if you don't have a program like Lambda Next, those are both great places to practice up. I think cracking the coding interview is pretty widely regarded as the best way to prepare for interviews. It definitely prepares you for the standard algorithmic whiteboard challenge interviews, but for better or worse, that's what 90% of the industry uses, so you might as well brush up on that.
Okay. I have two questions here, one from Casey Johnson, one from Dan Sherman. Roughly how many people start every month? I know you guys are starting every 4 weeks, but I'm not sure if those are like slightly offset depending on the course, but how many people start each month, and what is the average class size?
So the biggest cohort ever, or I guess cohorts. So we start a new class every 5 weeks, and we start all 5 tracks every 5 weeks. So the classes right now on average are about 50 people. And then we break those down into groups of 8, and they're kind of 8 students for 1 TA. And then there are section leads. I think there are 25 students per section lead. And then the students per instructor, I think the biggest has been around 100. So it kind of breaks down. You have a big lecture, and then you're broken down into a section, and then the sections are broken down into groups of 8. So spend most of your time in that group of 8. The average class size right now is about 50. The biggest ever has been right around 100.
Okay. I guess this is a pretty good question. Can part-timers apply to become like TAs? People going?
Yeah.
So, okay.
So you can apply to become a TA, or internally we call them PMs, after the first 4 months of the program full-time. So it's basically 2/3 of the way through. Similarly, if you're doing part-time, once you're 2/3 of the way through, you can apply to become a TA either for the part-time program or for the full-time program, depending on what your schedule allows. Most people in the part-time program have a job already. And we've seen some people doing part-time, which is really interesting. They still do Lambda School for 40, 50 hours a week. They just do it at a much slower pace, and it takes them a year instead of 7.5 months. And they just spend way more time outside of class working on stuff. I think it's a really interesting way to do things. It moves a little bit slow for my taste if you're spending all day as opposed to 3 hours a day. But I mean, if you're writing code, 50, 60 hours a week for a year, you're going to be good at writing code at the end of a year. So yeah, it's been interesting to watch.
Do you guys have any plans for like work with people that have like, I don't know, so Craig asked the question, do you have plans to work with other people that have like flexible hours but can't fit like the rigid schedule of like a boot camp? So I know you have like night classes for part-time, and then the full-time is like all day basically. I've asked Mitchell about this once. I was like, you guys record everything. Have you thought about doing like a Lambda version of Udemy where you just like have like sign up for our Lambda classes, but this is the videos?
Yeah, we've tried some very small trials of that, and it's never been successful. I know it's just really hard to be off on your own for 7.5 months and try to figure it out. We've had, kind of TA support and that kind of thing and cohorts, but it's just really difficult to do if it's not a live, interactive group of folks working on something together. It's just, I don't know what it is, but we humans are built to be working together.
Okay.
So I would love for everybody to be able to participate regardless of schedule, but I don't see a good way to do that yet. I don't know.
Yeah. I get this question all the time. I've asked you about this previously too. What do you think about the web dev saturation problem? That it doesn't really. There's a lot of people that say they know how to code, but no one can There's a lot of people that can't code good. There's a lot of people that can code at like a basic level, but not enough to get a job. So there's like this awkward saturation of a whole bunch of people that have graduated code boot camps and still can't get jobs. And so what do you think about that?
I mean, I think it looks like every other industry. You don't have the same extreme shortage that you had, 5-10 years ago. Like, if you were to learn to code in 2012, you could suck and you'd still get hired like that. That's not the case anymore. That doesn't mean the market is flooded. I hear, all the time that the market is flooded. But, we have worked with a bunch of hiring partners and they'll put out a job description for a, junior engineer, and they get 100 applications, and they send out FizzBuzz, and like 2 people can finish FizzBuzz. So it's like the market is flooded with people that cannot code. So your job is to separate yourself from them, make it clear that you can code and that you're a competent, capable engineer. And if you can do that, you'll still be hired pretty quickly. It is more difficult to make it clear that you can code, and frankly, some people still cannot. But there's still the number of junior engineers that need to be hired is still huge and growing, and it's more than any boot camp boom could support. The other thing that you see is it's the same, 250 people that can't get a job from, this boot camp, from these set of boot camps that don't do a very good job, that just go around and apply to every single job. So there are a lot of applicants to every job, but it's like the same people just applying everywhere. And sometimes that works. I mean, brute force can work. Even if you're a bad coder, it's a numbers game at a certain point. It's just really, really difficult to play the game that way. It's much better to be competent and be good at what you do, and then it's easy to get a job.
Right. What about so this is a question, there's like a dev that's working already, but they want to do Lambda School like part-time to upgrade their skills. Would you recommend?
Yeah, we do. We see a lot of that. So if you're financially focused, if you're doing that, you should make sure that going to Lambda School will increase your salary by 17%, or it won't be worth it. And if that's not what matters to you, if you just want to upskill, then that's great. I mean, that's the way I would do the math. The trade-off is that, you do have to pay us. It's not free. But we see so many people come in with kind of entry-level programmer making 60, 70. They go through Lambda, then they're making 110, 120. That's a really easy, that's a good decision to make, right? The trade-off is that because, you're already probably above the income threshold, we can't guarantee it in the same way that we can guarantee that it'll be successful for you for someone who's not making 50K as a software engineer, because legally there's not a way to guarantee you'll increase your income. So you'll have to take on that risk, but we see people crush it to do that.
What about people that have like computer science degrees and they're just like, it didn't work, so I'm going to do Lambda School? Yeah,
there's way more of that than people would think. There's way more. There's a couple students came in, 3 or 4 months ago, and they had a computer science degree, but they'd written code in like 1 or 2 classes. That's actually very common. So a computer science degree, for people that don't have it, is this magical thing that teaches you to code and gets you a job. When people do have it, they're always like, oh my gosh, that's what a computer science degree is? Like, that's not what I expected. So yeah, I think, we definitely work for folks that have a CS degree.
Okay, we talked about this at the beginning of the stream. Is there where do you plan on expanding to next, I guess, after EU, UK? Because there's one person that wants to know about Canada. So, what's next, I guess?
I would love to be in Canada. We're working on that. It's not up to me. I think we'll get there in 2019, but don't quote me on that. Canada, Asia, and Latin America. That's and the rest of the world. would be the next places that we would go. I'm not sure what the time frames are on all of that. We definitely don't want to expand too fast and leave, North American students hanging. We want to do right by the students that we have in the main market that we're in. But we'll expand as it makes sense to do so. I wish I had better answer than that. And I know if you're in India waiting for LAMBDA School to come there, then it's frustrating. But we're doing all that we can.
Okay. Do you have any, like, where do you see, I have two questions, I guess. Where do you see LAMBDA in, like, 5 years? Because I saw that one job app, and at the bottom of the job app, it said LAMBDA School certificate required or computer science degree. And then the second question is, in, like, 5 years, where do you see this being? Do you see this covering, like, all aspects of programming, or are you going to expand past just programming into other things?
Yeah, so first of all, I think what will make LAMBDA School strong over the long run is the network that we build. So the network of graduated students that have been hired, the network of hiring partners that know who we are. I mean, frankly, we have a harder time now than if we would have started, 5 years ago, because there's so many people that are just sick of crappy bootcamp grads that can't code. So we have to kind of fight against that stigma and separate ourselves from being a code bootcamp. And we play into the university graduation hiring flow more than the alternative flow, and that's pretty important. So 5 years from now, I think we have a really incredible hiring network. Ideally, it's something where if you go to LAMBDA School and you're qualified, there are people lining up to give you a job on the other side. I think we'll get there relatively quickly. And then the next question is, what about different verticals? So the way that I describe it is that LAMBDA School right now is basically what Amazon was when Amazon was selling books. I think we'll always be, we will be, I hope, the best code school by a wide margin. You wouldn't go to barnesandnoble.com and buy a book. I hope that you wouldn't go somewhere else and go to a code school. But LAMBDA School will be more than just a code school as well. We'll have other verticals. I hope that we can we're not there yet, but I think it's fair to say that we've shaken up the code bootcamp space quite a bit, and we will continue to do so. And I hope we'll be able to do that to other job verticals, not just code.
Do you think you'll ever get to cybersecurity?
I can't announce that yet, but yes, definitely by the middle of 2019.
Okay. I don't know how to ask these questions. Like, there's some questions that are like, I'm torn between this school and this school. Why is LAMBDA better? Like, obviously, you're going to get a very biased answer if you ask why you should go to LAMBDA School to the LAMBDA School CEO. How do you expect me to ask these questions? That's like...
I can give you the generic, like, LAMBDA School versus other schools. It's the depth of curriculum. It's everybody is motivated to get you hired the way that no other school ever could be, because our finances aren't aligned in the same way. And I think we just do a better job. But that's clearly the biased opinion of a CEO. You should do your own research. You should talk to a bunch of students from both schools and see what they think. Do a search for LAMBDA School on Twitter and ask those students how they feel honestly. Don't go straight to me. Don't go to any official channel, because we'll tell you that. Go to actual students and see what they say.
Okay. One thing I get asked a lot, like I get DM'd a lot, and I've seen this a couple other times, like, have you read the Reddit reviews? I know everyone on Reddit is salty in general just because it's Reddit, and Reddit is really cynical, but they're like from like 2015, and they didn't graduate. And so it's just like, this isn't very fair.
I guess I can figure out Reddit. Like, we have had literally 50 positive reviews posted about LAMBDA School on Reddit, but it never goes to the top. Like, it just gets buried and died because Reddit doesn't want to accept that there might be something out there that's actually not too good to be true. They just want to, like, Reddit rips everything down that's not a 4-year degree, and especially a for-profit system that they think might be better. like Reddit basically thinks that education should be entirely free, and we don't support that, right? We're a paid program. So there's been 2 or 3 students with a really bad experience that we kicked out because they were plagiarizing, they were not showing up to work, and then we kicked them out, and then they post an angry rant on Reddit, and for some freaking reason that blows up to the top. So our net promoter score is super high. You look at any review site, we have almost perfect 5-star reviews, but all it takes on Reddit is one angry person out of the 800 students we've had, and that's the one that wins on Reddit. So oh man, it drives me freaking nuts.
But it's not specific to Lambda School. It's almost every boot camp. You can't find a positive one on any boot camp at all. Like that's the
or even any CS. Like it just, I mean, Reddit is salty in general, but the Learn Programming subreddit hates non-CS degrees so much that it's just like I don't even like. It's extreme, and like every time I'm on there, they're like, oh, everybody's shilling and like you're paying all these marketing companies to leave all these posts for you. I'm like, really? You think that? I don't know. It's bananas. I've never seen anything like it. So I feel like there's no way we can win on Reddit. It's just the deck is stacked against us, and even if we were perfect, they would still hate us.
Okay. Switching gears a little bit, do you have any numbers off the top of your head for part-time graduate hiring rates?
Part-time has not graduated yet. The first class graduates at the end of December. So
okay.
0. We've had a few students hired, actually. In fact, we're probably at like 10 or 15% hired, but no one's graduated yet.
Okay. What is the percent of acceptance applied to accept rate?
It depends on the track. For full stack web, it's depending on the cohort, somewhere between 5 and 7%.
Okay.
And the important thing to note here is that most people apply and eliminate themselves by not doing the work. That's by far our biggest weed out is, will you do the pre-course work? Will you do it well? Will you do it right? You would be shocked at how many people try really, really hard to get in, but they half-ass the pre-course work. So if you want to get into Lambda School, I'm giving you guys the cheat code. Crush it on the pre-course work, and that looks really, really good to us. So it turns out if you do good work, it's more likely that you'll do good work, and that's all we want.
So it's not like a multiple choice test that you like check. It's like something you manually have to do the code and then submit it, and then it's reviewed by people.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I wasn't sure.
We get all sorts of data about how you do the pre-course work, how diligently you're doing it, if you're showing up, if you sign up for a live class, if you're showing up for it, how often you're writing code, how often you're submitting code. So if you want to crush it in the Lambda School admissions process, just be diligent, do it well, do it right, and submit it.
Okay.
Probably shouldn't say that much because it's our secret. Anyway.
Okay, Corey, I'll answer your question. Does the free 2-week program drastically help for the pre-course? Yes, absolutely. That's why it's there.
It is the pre-course. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have to do the pre-course, or can you skip straight to the test?
You can skip straight to the test.
Okay.
But you should only skip straight to the test if you know you can do the test. If the test is going to take you like an hour and a half to do the 5 problems that you're given, like just do the pre-course work, and then like if you do the test, you should be able to just crush the test. It shouldn't even be. That's there for people who are just ready to roll.
Okay.
So I'd recommend people do the pre-course work.
Okay. Let's talk about the biggest success story that you can think of for Lambda School. Like, who has been your just like flagship? This guy put in the work, and here he is now.
We've got so many ridiculous success stories. I mean, Leon comes to mind. He had a master's degree in social work, was making, not much above minimum wage. He's actually designing escape rooms for a living, like those. I don't know if you've ever been in. Have you ever been in an escape room, Josh?
Yeah. They have them all over here.
Yeah, so he was making not much doing that. Now he works at PillPack, which is owned by Amazon. He makes more than I do, more than I ever have, actually. So Leon's pretty incredible. Jaram was working in a warehouse making minimum, or not Jaram, Julian was working in a warehouse making close to minimum wage, got hired by Uber. We just had a student hired by Google. Like the number of stories where it's like this person was making next to nothing, basically minimum wage, and they just hustled in Lambda School and then they got a 6-figure job is just absurd. Not everybody gets a 6-figure job, but I mean today alone we had someone that went from making 20K to making 110K. And that's just like an everyday occurrence now. Even last week was Thanksgiving break. We still had 7 job offers last week. It's not unusual for people to be wildly successful.
Okay. This is a question both to chat and to you, Austin. What do you think that Lambda School could improve on right now? And as a startup, I'm sure there's like 900 things on your to-do list, but what are like the, I don't know, first couple things that you want to work on immediately?
Oh man, I mean, we're working on so much stuff. I think one of the keys for us is to make it so that students, like, I think Lambda School is long enough that even though students get jobs quickly after they graduate, it's still difficult for a lot of folks. So you've already been in school for 7.5 months. So we're spending all of our time working on making sure that students can get jobs quickly. And ideally we get to the place where everybody's hired before they graduate. That will take a whole lot of work, and no school's ever been able to do that before. But I mean, we've got companies coming to us saying, hey, I need to hire, 150 junior engineers next year. I need to hire 500 junior engineers next year. How can we work with Lambda to make that happen?
Are you allowed to name names?
IBM, Nexian. Those are the ones that I can name. Like, there are a couple that I really wish I could name, but I can't.
That's awesome. So they're just like demanding, we want to hire your grads. How can we figure this out?
Yeah, I got a call from the White House last week that was like, hey, how can we work with the U.S. Department of Labor to help fill the shortage in these roles, because it's extreme and the U.S. government can't do anything to fix it. So there's definitely a need out there for willing and capable folks. You just have to become willing and capable.
Awesome. Those there's a couple questions. Those success stories, were they just web dev, or were they across all 5?
So we have only had graduates from web dev and machine learning. Okay. No one else has graduated yet. So those were almost all web dev. Yeah.
Okay, so just to let the chat know, Lambda School is still pretty new, and they have some new programs, and the programs are all the programs 7.5? All the full-time?
Yep.
Yeah, so all the programs are 7.5 months, but not all of them have finished that first 7.5 months yet, so there's no data on that. When is the next part-time class? I think it's 5 weeks, right?
Yeah, I think it's 5 weeks. Every 5 weeks, we start basically 5 or 6 new cohorts, including part-time data science. We'll be starting for the first time in, I believe, April.
Okay. I'm going to ask like some Tim Ferriss type questions.
All right, let's hear it.
What do you struggle with as a CEO?
So for me, Lambda School went from me and my co-founder, me and Ben, to 1,000-person organization very quickly. Like, we've got, 120 employees between full and part-time, and some 700 students. For me, it's been difficult to scale with that in my communication and making sure that everybody is on the same page and that everybody is very clear in understanding where we are, especially as Lambda School continues to, we try to get better really quickly and things change really quickly. So balancing that with thousands of people that understand where they are and where they're going and what they should be working on, and not being disrupted by that change is probably the most difficult thing for me to do. Because I just want to move really quickly, but there are thousands of lives that are affected anytime anytime we change something around. So in the beginning, we would just like make a change and everyone would cope with it. And we learned that that's not the best way to run a school. So now, Patrick is in a test cohort where he's selected to be in a kind of test group that's changing something. Seems like that one's successful. Now we'll begin rolling that out to the rest of the cohorts. So we're much more careful in how we go about making changes. And that's been something that's been hard for me to learn. You can't just be like, yeah, burn the boats, whatever. We'll do whatever makes sense, and everyone will just figure it out. So this may be surprising to you, but the most negative responses I've ever had to anything Lambda School has ever done was when we announced Lambda Next. Because I was like, hey, there's this full-time, fully supported, we just hired a half dozen people to be there all day and help you get a job. And people were pissed. Because they're like, you expect me to continue on full time after I graduate? I've got stuff I need to do. I'm out of money. I can't be here full time. And I thought it was going to be like this amazing, it's obviously great, right? We're spending millions of dollars helping you get a job, have this whole program to help you get a job. How could you be upset? But what we failed to take into consideration were just the practical life circumstances that people are in by the time they graduate. So we had to change up how we do that program and make it more flexible and kind of pull it back in. So that's the difficult thing, is that, just making things better isn't enough. You have to make them better in a way that people can predict.
Okay. All right, this is my question to you. It's kind of unrelated to Lambda School, but before we were talking about like books and stuff and how you read. And one of the things a lot of people have in common in Silicon Valley and CEOs are morning routines, and I'm curious as to what yours looks like.
Mine varies because I've got 2 kids at home, and their needs are changing pretty rapidly, as is my wife's. And there are days when I commute into San Francisco, and there are days when I work out of Pleasanton, which is closer to home. And there are times when I'm, fundraising or traveling and, doing stuff like that. So it varies a lot. In general, it's basically, I wake up at 5 with my son because he wakes up and needs a bottle. And when he's drinking his bottle, I read. And then if I'm going to San Francisco, I'll get out the door right then so I can get ahead of traffic. If I'm going to Pleasanton, then I'll stay back and go to the gym, kind of hang out a little bit more, have more of a morning routine. So it's a little bit tricky because we've got 3 different offices now at Lambda School, and my routine is different at each office, and I travel a lot, and it's different when I travel. And right now my kids are sick, so it's different because they're sick, but in general, it's, wake up, read, gym, get to work by 7:30.
Okay. And there's another kind of just CEO question out of curiosity from my end. When you hear the word success, who are a few people that come to mind?
It depends on which aspect you're thinking about. If you're thinking about business success, my role models are kind of Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, those the obvious ones. If you're thinking about life generally, I think of my father-in-law. He's very successful financially, but I've never seen a family that's as strong and as tight-knit as his. I think, it's really difficult to balance the two. I'm really grateful for my family because it kind of keeps me grounded. It stops me from working 20-hour days, which is probably what I would do without a family. But yeah.
Okay. And then one last question that's unrelated, or kind of unrelated, is if everyone had to read one book, what would you pick?
One book. Um, what is it called? I would read a book called The Guide to the Good Life. It's about Stoicism and the way Stoics would react to and plan for life. I think that's not because Stoicism is the ideal life philosophy, but because it counteracts, like it's the perfect counterbalance to the way most Americans are living their lives. And I think that's what we need. We need less worrying about the esoteric things that may or may not happen, and more just being grateful and dealing with life and moving on.
Okay. I guess that's it. A couple, I guess maybe last questions I'm trying to look. There was one that said from Manly, does iOS program cover backend servers as well?
Yeah, so the iOS class not only covers backend, but it goes through the same computer science section that the full stack web goes through. So you write Python, you write C, you build apps, and what's now Django may become Flask soon. But yeah, you'll spend a whole lot of time in backends.
Okay. Well, 17%, will that number change, you think? You see that being pretty static?
Over time, it'll change. We need more data before we figure out how that changes. Ideally, if there were anything I would have changed about the way we set things up, it would be a lower percentage and a longer time, just because 17% is a lot. But I don't have any firm plans for that yet. I'm always looking to drive prices down as fast as we can.
Okay. So here's a quick question. Do you, Chris, I'll ask yours in a second. Can students swap between curriculums if they go for web dev and they're like, I want to do UI UX? Can they do that? And I want to switch to data science or whatever. Is that a thing?
No, you have to have made the decision before you join. So do the pre-course work and pick what you're going to do.
Okay, so no switching. And then Chris wants to know, Chris says, do you see LAMBDA housing technology shops with apps, games coming out of like a LAMBDA umbrella?
Like a LAMBDA dev shop kind of thing?
Yeah.
Not right now. I think our purpose is to build employees for other institutions. We may get to a scale where that makes sense. And a lot of students build stuff together just for fun. But I don't see that being our business model right now.
Okay. Can you swap for being a part-time student to a full-time student?
Yes.
Okay.
That's easier.
Ibishan says, do you pay Josh to promote you? No. It's just good content.
Haven't been over that yet.
Yeah, we haven't discussed. They think that you pay me like 10 grand to make a video every week. Okay.
You wish.
What else? I guess that's it. We're just about out of time. I need 2 minutes. Only 2 minutes left. So, Austin, thank you for your time. Again, I know you're super busy, dude. Actually, I booked a time on your schedule today, and I got an email from your assistant saying, please tell me why you booked a time here so I can tell Austin. So, like, you're...
Yeah, she's got my back.
Yeah, you're, like, the super, like, official dude now. I have to, like, go through, like, 4 walls of management to reach you, so this is nice.
It's a little weird. It's a little obnoxious. There's no way I could keep track of it. It'd be a full-time job to, like... I'm really bad at scheduling stuff, and I would screw stuff up. So,
okay. Do you have anything exciting announcements about LAMBDA that you want to mention before we head out?
Part-time data science is coming. Cybersecurity is coming. We have. I'll throw it out there now. We have a program.
No, you muted. Your microphone muted. I'll throw it out there, and then it muted.
1 sec.
No, you're good. You're good.
You can hear me now?
Yeah.
We have a program for veterans that we're going to be launching this week. So we're teaming up with some veteran organizations to help train a lot of veterans. It'll be fun.
That's awesome. So I'll save that for like maybe next Friday with Patrick. If you announce that this week, then I can get some details and talk about that.
All right, sounds good.
Cool, man. Thanks for your time, stream. Thanks for hanging out. I hope you enjoyed it. And everyone says thank you in the chat. If you liked the video, please smash the thumb before you head out. I'd appreciate that. Austin would appreciate that. And if you're interested, there's the link in the description.
Awesome.
Appreciate your time, guys. We'll see you.
Thanks, everyone.